Alright, so we are going to focus on the ears. So I have my sequencer open here, alright, sequence open. Actually, it seems like I have another one somewhere to delete this here. And with that open and with our control rig in here, right, the mesh, and then we're adding a control rig to it. You can go back to the sequencer, select the dark creature, drag it up so we can see it, so kind of here. And what I want to do, very simple, is change the position of the ear. So I'm just going to select the ear here. I'm going to turn on snapping for the rotation, and I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees behind, and let's say 50 up. Same thing for the other one, 90 degrees in the back and 50 up. And with that, we already have a new ear position. Now we can, like we always can do, drag this down here to like 1 frame or something, and we click on the dark creature here, right click, create linked anim sequence, and we're going to save this in the animations, and we call this dark creature underscore ear underscore pos 1, I guess, for position 1, and export, and we go into the animations folder. So, but how are we going to use this now? We're going to the AnimVP here, so basically this one here, yeah, and we go inside here. Here we have our control rig, etc. If we go into the new state machine, we have our walking and our jump, right? So what I want to do is show you how you can add different animations together. Now, this is not useful here really, because if we wanted to modify the jump, right, and we would have, we want to have the ears back when we're jumping, we could just literally change the animation itself so it has the ears back. But I just want to show this here really quickly, just for the purpose of learning. We can use a blend, layered blend per bone. With that you can blend animations based on the bone position. So not really position, but let's just plug this in here. I'm going to show you. And we can go to the asset browser here and get our ear pause, get out here, and we can plug this in here. So by the way, if you are in the anim preview editor here, you can check if it's in an error or not, so you can actually see when it's happening. So, and what do we want to do with that? We can select this node up here. We can unfold the layer setup, unfold the members, and then we have an array element. We can just hit plus here, and we have bone name and bone depth, what we can do here. And what I'm going to use is the head here. Then I can hit compile. If we now go in here, you can see that the ears go up. Why in head? Because if we go to the skeleton, basically what it's doing is everything above the head, everything inside the head, yeah, every children of the head is going to be adjusted. So it would essentially also adjust the eyes, I think. So maybe a better solution instead of using the head is using ear. Actually, what is the ear called? Ear underscore 01L. Ear underscore 01_L. If we now hit compile, and in air, you can see only the left one, but we can hit another plus here and we can do the other ear, ear underscore 01_R. Compile, and now in air, and we got both ears, but the eyes will not be adjusted. This is usually used for when you're like, imagine a human character walking, right? You're just walking and you want to reload your weapon, yeah. And then you have a boolean or something in here which allows you to blend in, you know, like if you turn this off, now hit in air, it's not going to show, but if it's at 1 and you hit compile and in air, it's going to show. So like you're walking and you try to reload and then it's blending in, or you have a boolean with a different animation. I just wanted to show you this because this is something very handy if you're playing with characters. So, but what we are going to do is, I'm going to completely delete this out because it makes no sense for us here. If I want to position of the ears like this, I'm just going to like go back to my creature here. I'm going to select the ears, Control G, and I'm going to load an animation, and we have the jump pose, right? And we can just literally change the jump pose, which I'm going to do now. And like before, I'm just going to save this. Actually, we might have made it a little bit wrong because you can see the animation is over here. Let me make this a little bit bigger maybe. The animation is over here, but we saved this frame, so we got a little bit of a problem here. Let's just right click and, because we want to have it here. So jump including the ears. So now we can maybe delete the old ones first of all. Those two, don't need them. Just delete, and now right click, create linked animation sequence, and in the animation folder, dark creature underscore jump underscore pos 1, I guess. Because it's actually a jump now. So, and here we have it. So here we have the new jump. Let's take a look. We have the new jump with the ears in the back. And here we have the old jump, right? So let's just replace the jump here really quick. And just go out of here and we can just drag in the jump pause 1 like that. And let's see if we can just drag the transitions here. And we really didn't change anything here. And we now just have to change this here. We did something very simple. We just grab the in-air, plug this in here, get a step out into the back transition, and we get the in-air, get not. Plug this in here. So let's go step back, and we can basically delete this up here, because it's literally the same. And if we're now going to jump, we get our jump with the ears back. Yeah. Though it's not very dynamic, they're pretty static, we just have to change them a little bit. And I guess I'm also going to delete the old one because I'm pretty sure I don't need the old one. We have the pose, which we can also delete. This is not needed anymore, and the jump pose. And now I want to change also the run, because when we're running, I will also want the ears to go kind of back, like he's building up some speed or something. So let's go back here. And I'm going to put in now the animation of our run, the cat running. And I already get kind of the right ear positions. I changed them a little bit, but you can also bend them back or whatever. And then we have the animation over here, right? So I'm going to set the start frame here. So right click here, set start time, not quite accurate, put it 1 frame further. And the end goes kind of over here. I'm not so sure where it's looping, so I'm going to hit play here, spacebar. For some reason the animation seems to be a little bit longer, you can see. Here's like a very slight end stroke, so I'm going to end the animation here. And let's see if this works. There we go, there it's looping. I don't know why it was longer for me, maybe I dragged something around before, so. But left, right, and left. Yeah, this is properly done. Just make sure you have the right length here. You set the start and end, then you can click right click and create an animation, and we call this cat underscore run underscore new or just underscore 1, I guess. Okay, and we get it here. We can open it up and see if it's properly looping through. It seems like we need to eventually cut it up 1 frame earlier. Not sure why it's trying to end there. Let's cut it up 1 frame earlier. Now it seems to be working right. Let's try this again. I'm going to delete this here because we don't need this. Cat run and redo this. All right, let's see. And there we go. Now it's properly looping and everything. You just have to be aware what you're doing. Then you can figure out small mistakes anyway. All right, we have this now in here. What we want is to replace it. Replacing this will be very easy because we, if we take a look at the anime here, all we have for the run and stuff is this state here where we have the blend layer in, right? This one here. So all we really have to do is change the last one here. Instead of using, what do we use here? The cat running 1exp, just the cat run, whatever here. We can just plug overlap this here or delete the other one out, whatever. And now if we are doing that, you can see he's like blending nicely back his ears. And if I now just hitting play, we get our ears in the back here. And I'm also going to delete in the old walk here, not really like it's needed. This one here. It's only in here currently, so it doesn't matter to me. If we really wanted to change back, we only would need to like reset the position of the ears, I guess. Force delete should be just fine. Usually I'm not deleting everything right away, but in this case, it's not a high risk. And now I want to touch on something else, which are the physics assets. You can see the ears are kind of falling. This is just me really roughly putting this in. We're going to do this properly together. While they are technically relatively easy to do, I'm not a very big fan of them. But yeah, what I also did is, for example, my schoolgirl, right? The skirt, the blazer, and the hair are all physics assets. So those are real physics here. And we're going to do roughly the same thing with the ears. It's not going to be as complicated as here. Just be aware, physics are maybe not always very accurate, or physics are not always working relatively reliable. You can see on the ear here, it's sometimes a little bit janking around. You just have to set them up as good as possible and hope they don't jank around. Because those physics assets are also based on the frames. as lower frames you have, as less accurate they will get, and as more they will jank around. So now, how do we create physics, right? First of all, we click, you can see I have two in here. One got created when we imported it, the other one I created as a test. If we want to create our own, we can just right click the skeleton here and create, and physics asset, create. Those here are just like preview settings to generate settings, generate physics. I'm just going to hit create and we're going to take a look at what we get here. We get a lot of janky things, right? We get, it doesn't look accurate at all. So what we're going to do is go up here and we can see the so-called bodies, and we're going to delete them for now. And we can see stuff. Now, for you, things might look a little bit different in the viewport. If you go to character, under mesh, I made mine wireframe, maybe yours is at none. I'm just going to stay with wireframe so I can see stuff. Then we can also show the bodies, which we just deleted, where we don't have any. I just want you to make them all solid for now. And we can also show the constraints, just make sure they're all positions, all limits. Currently we don't have any. And over here in the skeleton tree, we can show the bodies, which we just deleted, show them based on the settings, if they're simulated or kinematic. I'm coming to this in a second. We can show the constraints, which we should do. We should also show the primitives for now. And here we can show our bones. Currently we don't show our bones, we want to show them. So let's go to the ear. Here we have the first ear, right? And actually, let's start with the head. If we right click the head and we can add a shape. Let's just add a sphere here, and we can see we have a sphere in here, which is a body. This is a body. And if we take a look at the left side here, we have the bone, we have the body and the primitive. All the primitive is, it tells us which form the body has, yeah? So, and I can see it's a sphere, yeah? So usually you don't need to show them, so we can go up here and just not show the primitives, because it's pretty clear what it is, it's a sphere, yeah. So if we now select the head here, the head body, we can scale this a little bit down. This is basically the thing that's like falling and simulating and colliding with stuff. We have to set this up manually. If we now move this a little bit up, because it's spawning at the bone start, and if you remember in Blender, we set up a bone from the top to the bottom, which is invisible in Unreal Super Dumb. We're going to move this middle here, we're going to scale this up down, and we're just going to try to fit this kind of accurately to the head. Let's leave a little bit space to the outside here. We can actually scale it a little bit here. Maybe actually we want a capsule. You know what? Let's try a capsule. Let's delete the body again. Let's right click the head. Let's add a shape and let's use a capsule. And then we can scale the capsule overall a little bit down, move it a bit up. We can also make it just simply another body. So right click and add a shape, add a sphere. And we can just simply add 2 to make this a little bit more accurate. So now you can see we only have one head here though, right? This is because this one body has 2 primitives. If we now unfold this and show the primitives, you can see this one body has 2 primitives. Yeah. So there's maybe a little bit more reasonable to keep the body added, to keep the primitives shown, though we still see them. So now a few things. If we hit simulate up here, it's going to fall down. Why is everything falling down like that? This is because we only have one body and one body is controlling everything. If we select this body here, go to the defaults here on the physics type on the right side where we see all the settings. Not everything there is interesting. The only thing that is really interesting to us is the linear dampening, so the movement dampening, the angular dampening, how much it's like rotating. And then we also have the physics type, which is interesting to us, and maybe the mass a little bit. So dampening should be relatively clear, movement and rotation, how quickly it comes to a hold. Then we have the physics type. Now it's on default, and we should probably never use default, I guess. We should use either kinematic. Kinematic is no movement at all, it's just not simulated. And if we change this to simulated, it's actually simulating. We should be aware of what we have in here. So no default. The head should be kinematic. The reason I put in the head is because those things also use collisions. So we want maybe the ear to collide with the head, so it's not going through the head, right? So let's set up the ear. We're starting here. We right click this and add a shape. And why can I not add a shape? Because we're simulating. Add a shape, a box. So we are going to scale this down. First of all, make it quite a lot more flatter. And I'm going to rotate this a bit so it's a little more straight here, like 20 degrees or something. And I'm going to make this quite quite more thin here. I'm going to keep it relatively long because you have to imagine how it's like falling onto the head, right? So we don't want a lot of rotation here. I'm going to move this a little bit up here. It's not too far inside the head, because if we change this now to simulate and hit compile, actually we don't see much, but if we select this one, then the other body, so both are selected, yeah, like that, actually all three of them, and we up here check enable collision, we can see they all change the colors. If I select both and disable collision, we can see they are now a little bit more grayed out. If I select both, enable collision, they're not as grayed out anymore. If I hit simulate, you can see it's reacting differently. It's getting shot out by the head here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this a little bit further out here and rotate this a little bit differently. Maybe turn off snapping here, just so maybe not too flat, just so it's not getting like shot out. As janky as this window is, but you have to work relatively accurately. So one side note here real quick, if I press Ctrl Z, it's going to break. All right, I can hit simulate, I can hit not simulate, it's going to break. Let me redo this really quick, redo, and it's still breaking and whatever. You have to close the window whenever you press Ctrl Z, it's just that broken. I really hate this window, but whatever. Now, just a side note, how do we make it hold now, right? It's kind of accurately in here. How do we make it hold? By the way, whenever you leave it, the window, you have to change your settings here so you see stuff. We want to actually constrain this ear body to the head, so it's like connected. For that, we have to select the head, right click it, and there are constraints. And we can select the ear here. Now they are actually connected, and you can see, well, while it's not reacting properly, but it's actually connected. So now, how do we change that it's reacting so weird? We have a few options here. First of all, we can select the body itself and change the dampening. Let's use something like linear for the movement, 5, and a rotation of, like, say 25. Take a look here. It's already dampening out much quicker, right? So it's not like janking around anymore. The other thing is that we can select a constraint, this thing here, and we have a lot of options here as well. I wanted to just fold in the first two because those don't matter currently. And then we have the linear limits and the angular limits. So the positioning limits and the angular limits, the rotation limits. We want to keep the linear limits locked for now. We don't need them really. And the angular limits, we want to have limited, so we can limit how far it's rotating. You can see we have like a cone here and semicone here or whatever. And what I want is to not rotate it much around here. So I'm going to limit the twist to, let's say, like a 5 or so. And you can see the green got way smaller. I can also make the green way bigger, yeah. But I want like something very low here, like a 5. And then we have the swing and the swing 2. If we change those, you can see how the red one is deforming. I actually want to deform this one here, so it's like more swinging down here and less swinging to the sides. So let's say like a 50 maybe. Let's take a look how it's now simulating. You can see now it's far better simulating already by just adjusting those two things a little bit. There are a few more options in the constraints here. If you scroll down, we have swing limits. This is just for like soft stuff. I'm not entirely sure how they really work, but what I'm going to do is here change this to, let's say, a 7. And if we scroll further down, we got also something that is called motor. Now the motor is basically trying or helping us to find back to the default position. So linear we locked, we don't need this currently, but let's go to the angular motor and we can check this slurp here. And then we have a strength. If we say this is going to be like something very high and we hit simulate, you're going to see it's literally not changing because it's like extremely aggressively trying to find the default position. But if we use something like 4000 here maybe, you can see it's not really a dampening. It looks like a little bit of dampening, but it's actually not. It's just trying to find back to the default position. Whatever, let's keep it in there. Usually I use something 3 to 4000. This looks just fine. And what we need now is obviously the rest of the bodies for the rest of the ear. So what we're going to do is just we are selecting the rest of the ear here. Right click and add shape, add box. And now we can scale all of them together at once. We can move all of them at once a little bit down to the according bone. Let's keep it actually like this. This might just be fine. Actually, this one here needs to be maybe a little bit thinner, so it's not intersecting with the head too much. Maybe a little bit up. And we can reselect all of them. And we can change the linear dampening and the angular dampening. Why do we change the linear dampening if we have locked it in the constraints? This is because the bodies still fall. If we hit simulate, they're still falling, even if we lock the linear in the constraints. It's a bit confusing, but let's for now use a 5 here, so it's not too aggressive, and a 25 here. Okay, well, they're still falling. This is because we need constraints. How do we set up the constraints? We're going to the ear 1, which already has a constraint to the head. Then right click it, constrain to the ear 2. Then to the ear 2, right click it, constrain ear 3. Then to the ear 3, right click it, constrain to the ear 4. Then to the ear 4, right click it, constrain to the ear 5. And now they all have constraints. If we hit simulate, they're at least connected, even though they freak out. Now we can select all of the constraints beside the head because we already changed the head constraints. So let's just select all of them. By the way, it's always creating 2 on each end. So the ear 2 constraint is going to be on the ear 3 and on the ear 2. I don't know why, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but alright. Then we want to change this as well. We want to limit them. We said we had like a 5 here or something on the Y, and we had like a 15 on the swing here. And we had the swing limits like 7. If we go down here, we need the motor, the angular motor, and we put in like a 4000. Maybe I actually want to make this here kinematic just so it's not freaking out. There we go, yeah. The reason it was freaking out was this upper bone here, which is kind of just too small. I wouldn't do this again, really. But you can see with that kinematic, because this one is kind of the cause of everything. It's really confusing. You have to understand how things are connected, how things are working. You have to always like problem solve. So I'm not the biggest fan of the physics in Unreal, honestly. But you can see with that bone not freaking out anymore, the rest is also working pretty solidly. Now you can also see that when we're simulating this, it's going inside the head, right? So I'm going to select each one individually, because if you have all of them at the same time selected and click enable collision, they're going to collide with each other, and this is just not, well, apparently, it's not a good idea. They shouldn't be colliding with each other. So select this one, select the head, and enable collision, select this one, enable collision, select this one, enable collision, and this one, and this one, enable collision. So now I want to change something about how they fall. There is something, if you select the body itself here, the body, there's a mass scale, alright? And this mass scale, if you hold control, all you can do read through this, but basically we're going to make it lighter along the chain to make it appear as if it would be something else. So we're going to make this lighter against to the end of the chain. We're starting with the one here, and the next one is going to be 0.75. Next one is going to be a 0.5, and this one here is going to be a 0.25. So, and you will see it's already falling a little bit different. Can save this. So now we want to see this in our, when we hit play, right? We want to actually see it here. Currently we don't see it, so how do we get this in? We go to the UnMVP here, and we can get something that is called a rigid body node. And we can plug this in here, and plug this in here. And up here we can select our physics asset, which is just the physics, okay. And if we now hit compile, we don't actually see anything. Alright, because, and this is my fault, we didn't change the body types here from default to simulated. So we just have to select all of them and make them simulated. And yep, and now if we hit compile over here, you can see it's actually falling. But with that, we are going to see it inside here. So let's take a look. Right here it's actually not as janky, so this is just fine. And it's always related to the FPS, so if you have high FPS, things are going to work better, and with lower, worse. But you can see it's freaking out quite a lot. This is to be expected. If we go over here, we want a few things. First of all, we want here under the master alpha. You can read through this, but basically what it does, it enables the world velocity. So if we change this to a 1, it's not going to only be affected by the head and the bones moving, but also in the position of the world. And below that, you have clamping settings for the world velocity, because the reason it freaks out when we jump here, right? I'm gonna freak out a little bit. It's first of all because we have so many windows open that I have low FPS. This is the first thing. The second thing is because the whirl velocity is so high, it's just escalating, and we need to clamp this a bit. Usually I go relatively low here, like 1,000 or so. So we don't actually get too much here. And there's also the component applied linear clamping, which is pretty high here with 10,000. What I usually use is 3,500 or 4,000, just to clamp up and make sure the velocity doesn't get too high. And there's also this magic button down here, if you select a node. Clamp linear translation limit reference post. This is something we probably want. It's usually helping a lot with breaking stuff. So if we now jump around, we shouldn't get as much breaking anymore. Yeah, you can see it's not breaking anymore and like super wiggly going around. It's already much better and it's simulating properly. Though there are probably some things we want to adjust. For example, when we're jumping down, you can see how the ears don't really fall properly low there. And you see, I think we can actually increase the angular motor here a little bit to like a 10, 1, 2, 3. This is usually, it can be relatively high sometimes. It will find its position a bit better if you hit play, you know. You can see it's finding its position a little bit better. Maybe we need even a little bit more dampening. We'll see about this in a second. But this is okay. Now, the reason it's not falling when we're jumping is because I forgot one option. Physics are complicated. There's so many options. You can see it's like when we jump down here, the ear is spinning forward. That shouldn't really happen. The reason for that is because in the UWP here in this node, I forgot to change the component linear acceleration scale. We want to set all of them to 1 acceleration and velocity, because unless we do this, all of the other settings don't actually take effect there. They're not actually converting from the, we don't have any power from the world. And if we now jump down somewhere, let's take a look here. Jumping down, the ear should fall a little bit more properly. Yeah, you can see it's going actually back and not falling down. Yeah, if we turn around, it's going to go with the whirl velocity as well. Yeah, this is a really quick overview of how I do things. You really have to get the connections. This is a lot of playing around, a lot of testing, a lot of reading up, especially here the whole things and trying to understand things. This is usually how I set most of the things up. There's a little bit of a different thing when you try to like make a skirt or something, but this is already working relatively good. I think we can give certain things a little bit more dampening here in the angular stiffness dampening. Let's give the whole constraints like a 15 maybe. Don't want it too aggressive on the bodies, maybe a little bit more as well when it comes to the angular, I guess. The angular and maybe the limits, the linear as well, like a 7 and like a 30. Let's try this. Also, you can see it's falling quite a lot down. Not sure if I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select constraints again. Don't want it to go too far down, so what I'm also going to do is like rotate them slightly a little bit up. Not helping much, but I guess it does what it can. We might even be able to get a better result from like the control rig and whatever, because we have a lot more control. Things are a lot more clearer, but I wanted to cover this. So now we want to mirror this, so we're going to select all of this beside the head, right click, mirror, and all it really does for us is placing the stuff, and some stuff doesn't just work out. For example, the position of the constraints out of the bodies are just wrong. This is one of the most broken window ever. Let's move this down, it's up here again. Apparently this is rotated wrong, interesting. Just going to fit this up now, hope this kind of works. The constraints seem to be properly limited, though the rotation here is a little bit off. I'm guessing they kind of work. Maybe we can give it a lot more angular motor just to have it find its default position better. But generally speaking, it's not looking too bad, is it? Does it? It's a bit hard to see because everything is like pure black, but it's just fine. It's not breaking or anything, even though I don't have many FPS here. You can actually see the FPS. We can see the FPS if we just unfold this here. And there is show stats. Actually, it's not showing the stats, interesting, but show FPS. and we actually get in our FPS to the side here now. I have really low FPS. This is to be expected. If we save everything and close all separate windows, I also have one open here, you can immediately say how I get far more FPS out of this. Still quite low, honestly. Didn't expect things to get that low. What if I delete my screwdriver out of here? Not much higher. Delete. Maybe it's also about the control rig here. Let's delete the control rig out of here. Close this here. Yeah, it was the control rig. You see, immediately 100 FPS. You don't always get the full range of FPS you could have. There's also another command. If you go to Window, Content, or Developer Tools, Output Log, this is what you want. You get the output log here, and if you type in unit, stat unit, yeah, stat unit, you will get a lot more things like the frame delay and whatever. This is usually pretty handy to have. As long as nothing is red, I guess you're just fine. But yeah, I don't completely trust the actual FPS. This is always a little bit weird. But there we go. We also have now physics. One thing though, maybe we want a little bit more of a collision here, so maybe you want to make it collide with the arm or whatever. I'm not going to do this because it's not going to be seen anyway, like honestly. We really see any collision with the arms or whatever, maybe with the head a little bit, but with the body or whatever, we're not going to see it. Maybe for something bigger, a bigger character or whatever, you might want to do this. One last thing here I want to show is if you select this node and you scroll all the way down, you have a performance and LOD threshold. It's set to -1. -1 is just for all LODs this node will run. But we want this to turn off with LOD 1. So we're going to set a 0 here. If you now hit compile and we play, it's just going to work as before. But as soon as we are too far out, now I can't go out while playing. But cool. If I remember, we set up some LODs here in the skeleton mesh. I think it was LOD, right? Here we are on LOD 0. And as soon as we are kind of here, yeah, you can see it would turn off. So we are always kind of right on edge where like the thing should turn off. If we wanted to change this, we would need to trigger the LOD later. Say we go to our blueprint and temporarily really quickly increase the spring arm here, so the length where the camera is away. Yeah. Spring arm length 300, let's make a 600 out of that, twice as long. You can see that the ears are not simulating anymore. Yeah, so based on a certain range with the LOD, we can turn it off. If we wanted to keep this right now, we would need to change the distance from the LOD. So basically here where the LOD is 0, custom LODs checking, LOD 1. If we at a screen size of 0.3, if we increase this to, let's say, also a 0.6 and play, not quite, actually the wrong way around, like a 0.1 I think. Now we can see they're simulating again, right? But for now I'm going to keep like a 0.3 here, then it's off again because we are on the other LOD currently. Because if we're far away, I don't want everything to trigger. I'm also going to implement a LOD trigger for the control rig, because if you're that far away, I don't know how much we actually need of the LOD, of the control rig. And I'm also going to change the spring armor really quickly back to like my 300 here. So everything works again as expected. Yeah, if we take a look at the two control rig nodes, I thought that they didn't do this yet, but apparently we also have the option to turn the control rig off, which is super great. So let's put them to 0, both of them. Let's test this. Let's hit compile. And if we're going to play, we're going to play just as always. We have our positioning here with everything, etc. And if we're changing the arm length here, 600, we should basically get nothing. Yeah. Maybe we should get a better tail default position or something, but we can see it's turned off. Maybe we can just increase the LOD, you know, when we're like really far away, it's just turned off. So I think we might need to get, yeah, here you can see now it's on, good, and we're far away, it's off. So we definitely want to turn this off. Let's take a look actually at the FPS. Everything is turned off. Actually, it doesn't affect the FPS a lot. Something else might be the reason. Maybe because I have all of those windows open here again. Yeah, there we go. You get like a 90 to a 100. We turn this on. Yeah, a little bit lower everything. Just as expected. Alright, this is pretty great. Let's keep this. I'm just going to change the arm length a little bit back here. Spring arm 300. Alright, pretty cool.